use the current contracts we have with those jurisdictions if they desire. Or, and this is wasn't part of our slide deck, but I know Dan's on the phone, and I'd love to shout out to him as well and his team at the state, Dan Farrell, for getting the statewide administrative language included in our new CPACE bill, or amended CPACE bill this year. So basically what that means is, starting probably in 2021, after we get through competitive procurement and getting the program set up, smaller jurisdictions in particular can be part of a statewide program if they like to. They want to opt in. But currently the way it works is we go county by county. And so that's what we're running right now. Basically, our team consists of me as the executive director. Hi again. Deb, who I think is not on video, and Amy also support the VPA team. Jessa, who's one of our speakers, she actually is a senior director for PACE Financial Servicing and runs the Maryland program. We work closely with her as well as through the MAPA Mid-Atlantic Peace Alliance for a number of years, and she is our partner in Northern Virginia. And very excitingly, we also have Becca Richardson, whom Pete mentioned earlier, who is with Locus Impact Investing and is the business development director for a very important initiative for opportunity zones known as Opportunity Virginia. I think maybe 2/3 of you at least know what PACE is, but I'll go ahead and talk about it anyway just for a second to make sure everyone's on the same page. So basically, it's a concept that started out in California over 10 years ago. It was a way to try to encourage retrofits, deep retrofits related to energy efficiency, renewable energy, that weren't otherwise accessible to a number of property owners. So the way it works is that basically you can finance up to 100% of a clean energy project, and it gets basically financed by private lenders, but it gets attached to your property as a special assessment. And so what that means is it basically is there and survives as long as the assessment is valid, the term of the assessment is ongoing. And why this is something that's been done a long time. I have this cute picture of Ben, as I call him, my buddy Ben, who started this back in the 1700s. So basically it's a way of raising money for the public good. And since having projects that reduce less carbon is a public good, that's how PACE got its start. The C in front of PACE stands for commercial, and that is because in most states, actually, including Virginia, we are allowed to use PACE financing for commercial only and residential above 5 units. So basically anything, if you think about when you do a loan, a residential loan for your house, that is not applicable right now for PACE financing in Virginia. It's basically, in general, the way it works is a state will have legislation allowing CPACE or PACE to work in the state. And then that statewide legislation enables local governments to pass an ordinance to allow it in their local area. And the reason why that is the case is because when you have it, it's a special assessment similar to a property tax or sewer assessment. These kinds of assessments are enforced if they're not paid by the local government. And so as a result, you have to ask, local government has to agree that this is something that's of value to their locality. So they have to be the ones who enforce it. And in many cases, in a lot of states, they also help bill and collect. So they have to agree to it. And that is usually done through an ordinance or in some places a resolution. That has been done by the local governments here in Virginia. I think we're up to 10 now, and we have a few more, we think, in the queue in the next few months. So right now, most of Northern Virginia is enabled. Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun are all able to use CPACE, and some ones farther down the 95 corridor as well, and out west a little bit to Lynchburg. So basically, another important fact about CPACE is that in many places, including Virginia, you can use it for existing buildings and new construction. So you can't pay for 100% of the new construction project, of course, it's a component. However, it's an exciting use that we've seen and that Jessa will talk about later. Another thing I think I've already kind of mentioned, but the fact that it's an assessment, the fact that it's attached to the property, the fact that it's enforced by the local government also means that if you sell your building voluntarily or it gets sold because of a foreclosure, the CPACE loan, which is how we do call it in Virginia and our state legislation, survives it doesn't go away. It's not extinguished. So it's not like something that the lender doesn't lose their right to that payment. The next property owner would continue to make that payment. So it's like a property tax doesn't go away. The next property owner pays for that property tax. It's the same for CPACE. And another important component to CPACE, which is the case in most places in the country, is that it's senior to mortgages, to all mortgages. But in the case of, non-payment, you're only having to pay what was past due or current. You're not having to pay the whole thing back. So $1 million PACE loan, if something were to happen to, and the property owner stopped paying, no one would be responsible for paying back the entire $1 million. It would just be what's due, past due, and what's going to be upcoming for the new owner. It's also something that I think we bring up later on, but we also require that all existing lien holders on a property consent to this kind of PACE financing. We're not providing any surprises for the lenders on the phone. Basically, they have to see the underwriting and the analysis of what the project is and agree to it. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So just quickly, and many of you have seen this before, but I just wanted to make you aware of, the kinds of property types that can use CPACE. It's a wide variety, and it also includes multifamily, as you can see, as long as it's above 4 units in Fairfax County. There's also a wide variety of measures that you can use CPACE on. This is just examples of kind of buckets of measures of improvements you can do to your property. It's certainly not all extensive. Our guide does have in the back an appendix which has a list of some common measures you can install, but we are absolutely open to other measures if they are actually saving energy and water, creating electricity through renewable means, or we are evaluating stormwater and resiliency as well. And I'm actually going to kind of go into that a little bit because I think that's one of the great things, exciting things about Fairfax, is that they are actually including resiliency and stormwater in their CPACE program. To talk about resiliency can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, and I will be perfectly frank that those of us in the PACE industry are kind of in the early stages of figuring out exactly what we want to include in terms of how expansive can we be. We don't want to say everything is resilient because it, in some fashion protects the asset in terms of its financial value or physical condition, but we want to also realize that there are many measures that help make a building survive over the long term and basically be able to sustain to the end of its useful life, and that we think should be important to include. So these are just some examples of what we were thinking about. And Hampton Roads, of course, I think about that area very extensively. I think we have someone on the call, on the meeting from Hampton Roads, and basically, flooding is a huge issue. So we absolutely consider flood mitigation as part of resiliency, and it's actually specifically stated that way in our state bill. Here's some examples. I know that we're all very excited, and particularly in Fairfax, there's been a lot of talk about having the ability to use stormwater management. And so these are just some examples of what you could do in that purview. You can have different kinds of green roofs, which typically have been considered maybe too expensive. And this is a way to finance that. So we're excited that that is something that we have the ability to do. And we are lucky that we have just to our north, DC, which also allows stormwater management. And so we actually, work closely with them as well as part of the Mid-Atlantic Peace Alliance, and we can share, best practices regarding that. And lastly, it's not a specific kind of CPACE product, but we wanted to point out, given this difficult time that we're in, that there's certainly a lot of different kinds of systems that can be financed that save energy, that clean the air, that we would consider financeable through CPACE. And it's something that over time, different kinds of property types like hospitals or medical centers, and potentially even office buildings may want to consider in order to make sure that we have really clean air that's filtered and not recycled too often. So it's just something to think about. It's a difficult time, and we just want to make sure people are aware of the options.